You're watching The Legal Breakdown. So we've just seen the most explosive testimony against Trump thus far, this time at the hands of Stormy Daniels in his New York criminal trial, and that was followed by a demand for a mistrial. So a lot going on. We're going to go over all of that. But first, just for those watching, if you want brief summaries of just the most important moments from Trump's New York trial, please make sure to subscribe to stay on top of our coverage. Okay, so Glenn, Stormy just testified for prosecutors. A few things that I need your reaction to. First off, what I think is as close to a smoking gun as we're going to get here, Daniels was asked, quote, did he express any concern at any point about his wife finding out, to which she answered no. Wasn't Donald Trump's entire defense that any payments were supposed to be made to preserve his marriage and not to influence the election? And yet here, it doesn't seem like Donald Trump is too worried about Melania finding out.
Yeah, Donald Trump's defenses have been nothing but inconsistent with one another. So when Stormy Daniels was testifying, not only did she say Donald Trump said, no, he didn't really care about Melania finding out, he added, you know what, Melania and I sleep in separate bedrooms, so don't worry about it. It doesn't make a lot of sense, Brian, for him to say, I paid this hush money because I didn't want to hurt Melania. I didn't want to hurt my family. I didn't want my wife to be upset with me. But now he's also maintained all along he had no relationship with her. So really, there was nothing to pay to keep quiet. Imagine if you had to go around paying every woman you didn't sleep with. None of this makes any sense. But, you know, Brian, it reminded me of something that I had to contend with in many of the murder cases I tried: inconsistent defenses. The defense attorneys are allowed to argue inconsistent defenses. Let me give you a simple example. In a murder case, I had defense attorneys stand up and argue to the jury, ladies and gentlemen, my client didn't kill anybody. He did not commit this murder. He is not guilty of the crime of homicide or murder. But if he did kill the victim, he did it in self-defense. You know, a jury will openly scoff at those kind of alternative defenses because they can sniff out the BS, right? It's just the defense kind of grasping at any straws they think they can grab hold of. So Donald Trump's defenses have been inconsistent. And I'll tell you, Stormy Daniels, I will say, was something of an erratic witness. She didn't necessarily answer questions exactly as the prosecutors or the defense attorneys perhaps wanted or expected. But you know what? She came across as a real person based on all of the testimony that I read accounts of. It's too bad that cameras aren't allowed in the courtroom. But I'll tell you, she related in excruciating detail so much about not only the one sexual encounter with Donald Trump, but other encounters she had, including when other people were around and they were taking selfies. She really detailed the rooms that she was in, what the hotel room looked like. And I'll tell you, even though she was somewhat erratic and a bit of a challenging witness, according to the reports coming out of the courtroom, it sure feels like she was telling the jurors exactly what happened with these encounters with Donald Trump. And now I think the jury will be looking at Donald Trump thinking, well, if you're willing to lie about even having these encounters, never mind falsifying business records to interfere in an election, if you're unwilling to even tell the basic truth about that, well, we are unlikely to believe your defense when it gets to even the more damaging and directly incriminating evidence about, for example, whether you knew that business records were being falsified to cover up the true nature of these hush money payments.
I should note, too, that we have a third co-host here. I've been joined by the dog here, so he'll be adding in his legal analysis as we move forward. All right, Glenn. Stormy does give detailed accounts of everything that happens. Trump, meanwhile, contends that they never even slept together. So at this point, isn't it clear that one party is lying and that either Stormy Daniels is just perjuring herself over and over and over, or that Trump is lying? Like, isn't that what's clear at this point to the jury?
Yeah, you know, can you imagine Stormy Daniels willing to put herself under the spotlight in a court of law under oath and perjure herself over and over and over and over and over again? Each time it's a felony offense for which she could go to prison. And The jurors will have to compare her account and Karen McDougal's account of their relationships with Donald Trump against Donald Trump, sitting there glowering and, acting up and whispering angrily into the ear of his defense attorney. But you know what? At the end of the day, I don't believe the jury will even have Donald Trump's account. He won't even take the stand and deny under oath that he had encounters and relationships with these women. So, at the end of the day, who is the jury likely to believe? And again, I'll go back to this. Most importantly, once the jurors conclude that Donald Trump absolutely had encounters and relationships with these women, they are, I think, far more likely to discard or discount any other claims that, gosh, Donald Trump didn't know what these $35,000 checks that he was signing, one after another, to Michael. He didn't know what they were for, and he didn't know business records were being falsified. I think, Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal, in a way, are props in this trial, but their testimony and the consequences of their testimony is likely to do lasting damage to Donald Trump's ability to win an acquittal.
Right. I would even say that it's their word against his, but the guy isn't even testifying, and the jury is going to infer something from the fact that he won't go up there and kind of back up what he claims. Glenn, also Trump's lawyers followed the testimony that Stormy Daniels gave by a motion for a mistrial, and that was denied by Judge Merchan. Can they appeal this effort?
Not until after the trial is over. In the event Donald Trump is convicted, once he's sentenced, that's when Donald Trump and his lawyers can file an appeal that includes all of the issues like Judge Merchan's denial of the mistrial. So that does not put a stop to the trial. There's no such thing as what's called an interlocutory appeal, which is an appeal that can be taken before the trial is over. There is no right to an interlocutory appeal of the denial of a mistrial motion. But let's take on this mistrial motion because Donald Trump's lawyers argued vigorously, strenuously. I mean, they kind of lost their minds for a minute there, according to the reporting, saying, oh my God, Judge Merchan, this testimony from Stormy Daniels about her encounter with Donald Trump was so harmful, so damaging, so prejudicial to Donald Trump that we demand a mistrial. Judge Merchan promptly denied the request for the mistrial because there's nothing legally improper about her testimony. But what did Donald Trump's attorneys succeed in proving to everybody? That Donald Trump had every motivation to want to hide, bury, secrete, conceal from public view what I think we've all now seen is damaging, prejudicial, horrific testimony about what Donald Trump did with Stormy Daniels, which is precisely why he paid and falsified business records to cover it up. So thank you for the assist in making Donald Trump's motive for committing these crimes crystal clear, a nod to Donald Trump's defense attorneys.
Right. I think the phrase that comes to mind is a hit dog will holler. Isn't the fact that these people that Donald Trump's attorneys are objecting every time there's damaging information from Stormy Daniels just prove the exact point that this was the damaging information they were attempting to secrete from the American people, and they're doing it again. They're proving it all over again, and now they're doing it in full view of the public.
Yeah, but let's be clear. It is a defense attorney's job to zealously represent their client, including making objections that are supported by the rules of evidence. So I don't fault them for that. But I do think they're proving the point that all of this is so damaging to Donald Trump. And that's why Donald Trump had to try to pay and falsify business records to keep it under wraps. Why? Because he didn't want it damaging his election prospects in the 2016 election. And let me add this, because I think there's something else that was really damaging, and that is the prosecutors asked Stormy Daniels about some Donald Trump posts. And Donald Trump repeatedly called Stormy Daniels horseface. Look at her. Horseface, sleazebag. This is how Donald Trump referred to the woman that he had this encounter with, assuming the jurors credit Stormy Daniels' testimony. And I don't think that will endear Donald Trump to any of the members of the jury, that he resorts to, I would say, sixth grade name calling, but that would be disrespectful to sixth graders. A grown man calling a woman he chose to have an encounter with horseface, 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 and sleazebag, that will turn a jury off to all things Donald Trump and Donald Trump related.
Let's finish off with this. If Donald Trump, on the off chance, on some planet, that he does decide to take the stand, wouldn't it just be a death knell to him if just one attorney for the prosecutor asked him point blank if he had an affair with Stormy Daniels? Because then one of them will have perjured themselves, and I think the jury will be able to determine which one of those people it will be.
Yeah, Donald Trump can't take the stand because he would not come off as a credible witness if he were to deny not only the relationship with Stormy Daniels, but with Karen McDougal. I think most of us have seen the Anderson Cooper interview with Karen McDougal when she said very tearfully and very credibly she had a 10-month, very intimate, very intense relationship with Donald Trump. She was in love with him. He said that he was in love with her. Maybe that was true, maybe it wasn't. But, once you directly pit Donald Trump against those two women, in the event the jurors believe those two women, then, he really doesn't have a chance of creating reasonable doubt about the crimes he committed in even, I think, the mind of one of the jurors, and it only takes one to hang a jury. But I think it's all but a sure bet that Donald Trump will not take the stand, because we've seen him in deposition settings before, under oath, saying things like it's fortunate that, they let stars do whatever they want to do to women. He can't take the stand.
And finally, Glenn, 1 to 10, how damaging do you think that this first iteration of Stormy Daniels' testimony by the prosecutors was to Trump?
Interestingly, on the legal front, providing directly incriminating evidence about the crimes, I would say she was about a 3. On the atmospheric front, helping prove Donald Trump's motive for wanting to bury what we have now all seen is deeply damaging and embarrassing information and evidence, I think she's about a 9.5 on that score.
Yeah, well, that right there goes to show why he was so desperate to secrete all of this information, to pay those hush money payouts so that the American people wouldn't find out what they're finding out right now, except doing it, in front of the entire nation on trial. With that said, there's a lot more to cover today as this trial continues to progress, including in terms of Donald Trump's defense attorneys cross-examining Stormy Daniels herself. So if you want to follow along, please make sure to subscribe. I'll put the links to both of our channels right here on the screen. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
And I'm Glenn Kirshner.
You're watching The Legal Breakdown.